The Bengals are about to begin training camp later this week, and virtually the entire roster is able to practice, but not everyone has a clean bill of health. So in this video, I'll explain who's injured, who's on an injury list, and why some of their recent roster moves make a lot more sense. Hi again, Bengals fans. John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati here, and thankfully, mercifully, Bengals training camp is finally here. For now, as training camp is beginning, I want to just kind of reestablish where things are with the current health of the team. As of right now, there are only two players on the roster who are unable to practice. That's tight end Eric Gall Jr. and rookie center Seth McLaughlin. All ended up on the physically unable to perform list due to the torn ACL that he suffered in week 9 of last season. It was actually the same ACL that he originally tore during his final season in college at Iowa back in 2023. So All is not going to be playing football until at least 2026. As for McLaughlin, he also suffered an injury last football season when he was still at the Ohio State University. He suffered a torn Achilles, and he's not quite ready to practice yet for the Bengals. And because he suffered that injury before he was in the NFL, that's technically classified as a non-football injury, hence the NFI list. Now, both of these players are on the active versions of these lists, so technically they're both able to be activated at some point, but obviously with All not expected to play until 2026, that's not going to happen. But for McLaughlin, it's just a matter of when he's able to be fully cleared to practice. And with those two names being the only ones on any injury list right now, that means that the entire rest of the Bengals training camp roster is able to practice with the team when training camp begins. Obviously, not everyone will practice if certain contract issues aren't resolved, but that's beside the point. The Bengals are in a very good spot injury-wise, but there are still a handful of names that we need to monitor as camp begins. For starters, there's defensive tackle BJ Hill, who was dealing with a foot injury at the beginning of the offseason workout program. He didn't really participate in the May portion of practices, but he was on the field in June. And then there's cornerback Dax Hill, who suffered a torn ACL in week 5 of last season. Obviously, he wasn't ready to practice when the offseason program began in May, but that is about to change. Zach Taylor said that both of the Hills are going to be ready to practice when training camp begins, but they're both going to be limited for precautionary purposes. And it's not necessarily the best case scenario because you would want anyone to be able to go 100% once training camp begins, but it's much better than having both of them be on the PUP list when training camp begins and you don't know how long they're going to be there. And this clarification specifically for BJ Hill, I think it adds context to some of the other roster moves that the team made over the weekend. The team ended up signing 4 players on Sunday, including 2 defensive tackles and former first-round pick Taven Bryan and former third-round pick McTelvin Agiyam. And they also signed a center in Andrew Ryan, who's going to be taking essentially the role of McLaughlin until McLaughlin returns. But the arrivals of both defensive tackles make a lot more sense knowing that Hill is going to be essentially on a pitch count for the beginning of training camp. And honestly, they should not rush Hill back at all over these next 6 weeks. Yes, you could play him a little bit in the preseason if he's able to do so, but making sure that he's 100% healthy by the time week 1 rolls around, specifically for this position group that lacks a lot of high-end talent, that's important. It'll also give Bryan and Agiyam a lot of opportunities in practice and in the preseason to put out some quality tape, so if they don't stick around in Cincinnati, they can catch on somewhere else. But the Bengals all of a sudden have 9 defensive tackles on their roster right now, and really 8 of them are healthy and ready to go. And that feels like a direct and frankly a warranted reaction to what happened to the position group this time last year when you had a plethora of defensive tackle injuries leading up to the regular season, including both rookies at the time in McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins Jr. Not having depth there really hurt the Bengals defense at the beginning part of last season, and frankly, it wasn't a problem that got any better as the season went on. Now, I'm not here to say that Bryan or Agiyam are going to make the roster. Frankly, I would bet against it, but their presence is going to be valuable, at least in August. And perhaps the most assuring news of all is that the 4th player that they signed on Sunday, of course I'm talking about former Bearcats quarterback Desmond Ridder, he was signed here not to replace anyone who was injured in the quarterback room. He was just signed to take the place of Logan Woodside. And I'm not going to say out loud why that's good news. I think you can already assume. But there you have it. The Bengals are virtually 100% healthy as training camp begins. Obviously, that won't be the case once training camp ramps up and they put the pads on and things get more physical and just the wear and tear of training camp starts to wear on these guys. But for now, there's nothing too concerning in terms of injuries. There's just a couple names that they need to monitor. And we will be monitoring them as well right here on A to Z Sports Cincinnati.